All right, everybody. We're going to be in chapter 13 tonight. Glad you're here and looking forward to discussing this chapter together tonight. I don't think it's one of our more difficult chapters as far as needing a lot of explanation. I think our challenge with this one is applying it consistently and properly. So what we'll do tonight, we will break into groups tonight because there should be some beneficial discussion about the topics that are covered in this chapter. So right now in chapter 13, we're in the practical application section of the book of Romans. We've dealt with the core of the book, teaching us about being justified by faith in Jesus Christ. We've talked about and discussed the Israel problem, why so many of the nation of Israel were outside of Christ and what God had planned and promised for them. We've talked about that. Now we're in that area where we're being encouraged to live out our faith. That is what it looks like to live as people who are justified by faith in Christ. Being led by the Spirit, not depending on our flesh, not depending on our own efforts, but being led down this road of righteousness by God's Spirit. So anytime any book of the Bible has this practical section, it's probably dealing with things that were most important, because it's not talking about everything that could be discussed. Every practical question about being a Christian, it's talking about a few very specific things. So I take that to be, that's because they were very needed in Rome. Among these Christians, these were issues that needed to be addressed pretty clearly, and that they needed to work on, that they needed to deal with. So chapter 13 is going to address three different topics for us tonight. It's going to deal with our submission to our rulers, to governing authorities. It's going to talk about loving our neighbor as ourself. And then the chapter will close out with a really clear, immediate, urgent call for us to quit living in darkness and to come into the light and live as children of light. So that's the simple outline, and we'll break into groups here in just a minute and discuss some things. All right, let's look at the first section, the submitting to our rulers and authorities. Chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. It says, every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. So, dealing with things that those Christians needed to be aware of and practice. What was the setting that Paul's writing in? Who's the governing authority that he's dealing with? It's Rome, right? If it's anything else, I don't know who it is. He might have somewhere in the back of his mind about Jewish officials or something like that, but primarily he's talking about the government of Rome, the rulers of Rome, the Caesars, the governors, the rulers of districts and territories, and their form of government. That's what he's talking to. They're living under that. He's telling them how to do that. And in a way that's going to bring glory to God and be in their best interest. So as we begin to look at this, first question is, what is said about the proper function of these rulers or these governing authorities? What are they, at its core, here in Romans 13, what is governing authorities? What are they supposed to do?
Maintain order.
Maintain order. And by doing what specifically does he say?
Ordinances of God. The ordinances of God.
Yes.
Punishes the evildoer.
On one side of the coin, they're keeping order by punishing the evildoer. On the other side, by doing what?
Rewarding or praising somebody who's doing.
That's right. They are ministers to you, he says, for good, because they're going to reward doing good. They're going to protect those that are law-abiding. They do the right thing. They do the good thing. But they're going to punish, correct those that are the lawbreakers that are doing evil. At its core, that's what he's looking at, right? Look in there. If there's something else, you can point it out. But I want to get in our minds really clearly what he's talking about here. That this is what rulers do. This is what authority does. It maintains order. It enforces laws and rules, and they set them up. They decide them, and then they enforce them. And when we do right, we get rewarded. When we do wrong, we get punished. Okay? So that is its basic. Now, he also is pretty graphic when he talks about these governing authorities. He says that they bear what? The sword. Now that's not a rewarding instrument, is it? It's not like they got the candy jar. No, it's the sword. So they have the authority, they have the right, they have the ability to use that sword. And that is an instrument of not only punishment, but severe punishment. That is their role, their capacity. That's God given to them. These rulers, these authorities. It's part of God's will that this be so. There were times, remember back in chapter 12, we were told that when somebody does us wrong, we're not supposed to seek our own what? Vengeance. Now, we weren't told at the time anything more about that except don't do it. Now we're being told what? There is a way in which that wrong is supposed to be dealt with. You don't seek your own vengeance. Now, was there a time back in the history of God's people where an individual was supposed to be the one seeking vengeance?
Yes.
Yeah. He's supposed to be the avenger. He was the one that said, "You killed my brother. I'm supposed to go after the guy that killed my brother." Well, that's not the case here. The case here is don't seek your own vengeance. But the governing authorities, the rulers, they bear the sword. They have the ability, the right to be the ones that will seek and enforce this vengeance and this justice. Not just vengeance, but more than that, justice. So its role is to enforce laws, to maintain order, protect the innocent, reward the law-abiding, punish those that do evil. That's what they're supposed to do. All right, so what is our responsibility toward our rulers and authorities? What all is said here? What's the very first thing that said? To submit or be in subjection. What is that? What do those words mean? To submit or to be in subjection? Okay.
To obey them.
To obey is certainly is an application of it.
Respect their
Respect is
position of authority.
Mm-hmm.
A willingness.
Who said that?
Over here.
A willingness.
Just being willing to subject yourself to them.
Okay.
And not just being defiant.
Mhm.
You know.
All right. What else? Anybody?
To recognize that there's somebody above you.
Yep. So it's all that's true. And when we recognize that there is someone over us, when we are going to honor them, respect them, be willing to do that, what are we doing when we submit ourselves, when we subject ourselves? What are we doing?
We're submitting to God.
Yes, I'm not asking the question like that. What is the essence of a wife submitting herself to her husband? Us submitting to our government. Us submitting to each other. What is the essence of that? I'm saying, what about myself?
Putting myself under your rule.
I'm putting myself under somebody else. That's the idea of subjection. Because you respect, because you honor, because you're willing, all the things we've said. But what it is it's putting yourself under. I'll tell you something funny. When we were kids and we would wrestle until we would say, do you submit? I don't even know if we understood what that word meant. We just knew it meant you give up. And that's what we would say, you submit. And you got somebody in chokehold and yep, they're going to give up. And that's a crude example, but we're saying we're giving up. You are the authority. You're the power. You're the one that has the right here. We're putting ourselves under you. All right. So be in subjection. Submit. What other specific things do we do for our government? We absolutely pay taxes, right? And God says to do that, to pay our taxes. What else are we told to do?
Respect and honor.
To show them honor, to give fear where fear is due, custom where custom is due, honor where honor is due. Okay. Recognize them as a minister of God. These are our responsibilities toward our government. That was those Christian brothers and sisters, that was their responsibility toward their rulers, their governing authorities. All right. So that being the essence of what he is saying, what is Paul's purpose in giving these instructions? Why is he telling them what you guys really need to do is submit? Bring yourself under this authority, recognize it, respect it, honor them, pay your taxes. Why is he telling them to do that?
Keep peace.
It certainly will keep peace, right? It absolutely will keep
Ultimately, it
peace.
shows Jesus.
Ultimately, it shows Jesus. Ultimately, it is what had we talked about back in chapter 12? That if you look at the Roman government, so they were evil, all those rulers were evil. What had we been told back in chapter 12 we're supposed to do to overcome it? We overcome evil by doing what?
Good.
Doing good. This is the application. He's not saying what you guys really need to do is you need to revolt, you need to rebel, you need to fight it at every chance you get. He's telling them to do what? Do good. That's how we overcome evil. That's how we show Christ. That's how we shine as lights in the world. We should be the example of ones that respect, obey, pray for, honor this institution which God has set up because they are from God. So he's doing that. He's saying, he's also helping us so that you don't have to live in fear. He's not saying go be a lawbreaker. No. You can live without fear. And in addition to not being afraid, we can live in good conscience. Because this is what God has told us to do. So he's not really here trying to give us guidelines to say, I'm going to tell you guys the line at which you can start to revolt. That's what we want, right? We want to hear him say, yes, obey them until here. That's what we want. He's not doing that. He's just simply saying, I want to show you the best way to live. This is the right way to live. This is the Christ way to live. We want him to say, yes, only until here, but this is for our good. This is for our peace. This is so that we can, according to 1 Timothy 2, live a quiet and peaceful life so that the gospel can have free course and so that we can practice our faith. So we're praying for them, we're honoring them, we're respecting those rulers. Everybody agree with that? It's who they are. It's what we're told to do. Their function primarily. So he's not telling us everything that government does. He's focusing in on that simple thing. They punish evildoers. They reward those that do right. Submit to that. Honor that. That's a God-given order. He's not talking about a government that commits genocide. He's not talking about a government saying, yep, you guys got to go along with that. He's talking about this is God's order, boiled down. He's put these in place to maintain order and to protect innocent people and punish evildoers. Submit to God's order. All right, so all of that being said, I'd like for you to take a few minutes, break into some groups, and I want to discuss a couple of things. I want you to discuss what bothers you about this instruction. Holly said everything. What bothers you about it, and be candid, or what confuses you about it, and also discuss what complicates it, what makes it hard for us to submit, to honor, to respect this ordinance and this institution. Okay, so that's what I want you to discuss. So do it in 3 groups. Looks like 3 would be a pretty good number, and we'll give you 10 minutes or so, and then we'll discuss what you discussed, and then we'll go further in chapter 13. All right, go ahead and get in your groups.
Yes.
See, I don't have
Everything.
All right, well, let's let Holly talk, and so all of us can hear. Go ahead. She got a face. You go. All right, share some of what you guys discussed about things that are troubling, confusing, hard, complicate the issue. What did you all discuss? Everybody probably at some point discussed, is there a line when you say, I don't have to, we can't obey? Did everybody discuss that somewhat to say, I heard talk about Nazi Germany or about under Nebuchadnezzar and things like that. So what's the answer to that? When rulers, when people in authority are telling us to do things that are immoral, ungodly, goes against our faith, what God has told us to do, the answer is what?
Right?
Well, certainly pray.
Right?
Yeah.
Just have faith in God that He can get you through whatever it's going.
Yeah. And we can resolve in our hearts to say, we're not going to obey you in this. We're going to obey who? God. If there's a conflict, we're going to obey God. We're going to do what He says. We're not going to do this or that. I don't know. Do any of you know things in your own life experience that you've had to say, nope, I'm not doing that? I personally can't think of any things in my life where I've had a crisis of conscience over what my government or rulers were telling me to do that I had to say, no, this goes against my faith. I've not had that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I've not had it.
I guess you think the civil rights movement, when they did the peaceful demonstrations that they did.
Exactly. Yep. And that was to them that at that time that was like, no, we gotta challenge this. They did it right. They did it peacefully. They did it in a way that brought attention to the situation and did it at great sacrifice. He's talking about the civil rights movement and about the disobedience in that day.
You know, I've never experienced this myself, but I've heard of situations where, in business, a person might have been told to fudge on the figures so that it comes out looking better.
Mhm.
That's lying.
Yeah.
And there's been movies about it and TV shows about it
Yeah.
and whatever. I've personally not been ever told to do that, but that would be a...
Yeah, now
you have to stand
that
up for
I didn't think about that aspect. So certainly some bosses along the way have told us to do some things that we had to say, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You can fire me if you want, but I'm not doing that. No.
COVID definitely has left me a lot of questions.
What's that?
COVID,
COVID?
are
Oh, yeah.
right to
Yeah.
assemble or not, really left me with a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What the right thing to do. I think everybody has. It's like, I'm not sure what we're supposed to do
Mhm.
in this situation.
And they're still investigating that.
Yeah, but whether to, trust the creator of all things and not fear any kind of anything, it was kind of a crisis of conscience in that situation.
Yeah, I'm not a good one to comment on that because Laura, Drew, and I, we broke it the whole time. You all stayed home, but we were up here broadcasting every Sunday. So we got close to each other, and then it was Lance and April, and then some others. So we didn't. We weren't very good on following that order. So. But I don't remember fretting over it. Honestly, it was like, huh?
So who do I need to tell?
I'm really going to turn this down. So one thing to me that is kind of troubling about it is when he says of these rulers that they're servants of God and they devote themselves to this very thing. That I'm wondering, it almost sounds like that's the perfect application of it. That you would have rulers and authorities that would say we're servants of God and we're devoting ourselves to doing what He wants. But it doesn't always look like that, does it?
It didn't look like that then. Either.
Certainly, if you're looking inside of Rome.
Right, it didn't look like that then either.
Mhm.
It is present.
So that's a little confusing to me as to what exactly he might be picturing there.
I guess getting back to what we were just saying, it's important to me that he didn't address the fact that if they're telling you to do something, it's against God's word, then we needed to respect and submit to God before we submit to the ruler who's telling us to do something that. And that kind of bothered me that he didn't address that.
Yeah, very often we would like a little more information on this. We'd like something, but in the absence of it, we should just focus on what he is telling us to learn its purpose. And that is to give us a peaceful path forward, living in an evil government, in an evil day. This is the best way to live. So.
I have a weird thought.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that what he is saying is not true. I believe it's true, and I believe he was being honest in what he said. But I almost wonder if it was softened more than we would like the fact that he's writing this to Christians in Rome. Like, I don't know if this was a written letter or if this was an out loud sermon like Hebrew seems to be. But I don't know. And that's total speculation, I realize that. But it's like, it's written very good. I mean, what I'm saying? Like, we would like him to say, unless they do this. But it's like, is the fact that this letter was in the very heart of the government, why it wasn't more, I don't know, blunt or harsh, or, you see what I'm saying? For the very safety of the people writing and reading this letter right here. But it had been not as harsh as we would have liked.
Toned down.
Toned down. It was politically correct. For the audience that had to read it, and the audience that could have been listening, and the audience that could have intercepted it. Very politically correct. Not that it's not true. I believe it's true. I'm not saying it's not the word of God. It's true. I'm just, in context of who and when and where it was written, it's very cordial to the Roman government. Just
I agree.
observation.
Do you think maybe he wrote it in that form not to offend the Roman government?
Yes, that's what
That's what she's getting at. Yeah.
Because, I mean, that just makes sense to me.
Sometimes we're troubled by being told to honor people that we don't think are very what? Honorable. And that, so that being so, how do we deal with it then? We honor what? We honor the position. We honor the arrangement. Paul stood before the high priest and said, you slapped me, you whitewashed the wall. And he spoke against the high priest, and then they rebuked him for speaking against the high priest. And what did he say? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were God's high priest. So it wasn't the man that was honorable. It was what? It was God's arrangement was honorable. And Paul said. So we can still honor the position that somebody holds, even when that person is not very honorable.
In the military, we talk to salute the rank,
Yeah,
not the person.
yeah. I think that's a good example of what we're talking about. You're respecting that rank. Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to jump in there and say something about it? Taxes, I absolutely agree with. Most of the things that they go for, I'm good with. It's the stuff that we spend it on that I don't like that troubles me. But it doesn't trouble me much. I don't think about it very often. We just send it, write a check. When they tell me I owe more, we send in more, and we trust that God's order is being honored. And I really don't do that simply because my government tells me to do it. I'm trying to honor God in doing it because He said do it to live in good conscience. And I don't want to be afraid of a knock on the door that somebody's coming to take me away because I didn't pay my taxes. But I, more than that, want to honor God. All right, there's two last things in this thing, chapter 13. One was loving our neighbor as ourself. And then the last one is this call to stop the deeds of darkness because the day is dawning. There's a new day dawning. So we'll talk a little bit about that next time. It looks like some folks are coming in, but we may have time. When we talk about, let's read this about love before we call it quits tonight. Verses 8 through 10. It says, owe nothing to anyone. So the idea that's tying these together is, what did we owe back in verse 7? We owed taxes and custom and fear and honor. And now he says, but owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in the saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. So they really needed to practice that. I want to read you guys something that I found real interesting. This is J.B. Phillips' translation of 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter when Paul's describing love. Listen to how he translates this, and we'll end with this. Speaking of love, he says, this love of which I speak is slow to lose patience. It looks for a way of being constructive. It is not possessive. It is neither anxious to impress, nor does it cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. Love has good manners and does not pursue selfish advantage. It is not touchy. It does not keep account of evil or gloat over the wickedness of other people. On the contrary, it is glad with all good men when truth prevails. Love knows no limits to its endurance, no end to its trust, no fading of its hope. It can outlast anything. It is, in fact, the one thing that still stands when all else has fallen. That's what he's calling us to do, is to love each other and to love our neighbors in that fashion. Not that if love, not that because love, but that anyway kind of love. We'll talk more about that next week before we get into chapter 14, but 14 and 15 are going to be real interesting, really dealing with how we as brothers and sisters coexist peacefully in the body of Christ, especially with differences. Any last comments, anybody? All right, thank you guys.